Hi everyone, welcome back to yet another episode of IIM MBA, that is Investigating Modern MBA, a podcast brought to you by IIM Sirmaur. Today we have a founder of a content-based media company with us. Again, an interrogating industry segment of this podcast, where we dive into the world of journalism. The name of the company is Barely Opinionated, and the name of our guest is Rohit Agarwala. I am very sure that you have seen his face somewhere on your Reels tab or somewhere on Instagram or YouTube or LinkedIn. A very famous face these days. And they're delivering content, they're delivering information, they're delivering news without any opinions. As the name says, barely opinionated. So today we talk about journalism as an industry. How has it evolved? How has it been evolving? The company he has been running for more than 3 years now, his entrepreneurial journey, and many more such topics. And all of this from a manager's point of view. So definitely some good content coming your way. So put on your earphones, open up your minds, stay curious, and let's directly dive into the conversation. Come on. Okay. Hi Rohit, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you doing, Dhruv?
I'm all good. I'm all good. It's been a long time we've been talking. So yeah,
Yeah,
I'm pretty excited for this conversation.
yeah.
So currently, where are you right now?
In Bangalore, I run my
In
company
Bangalore.
in Bangalore. Yeah,
Okay. How's Bangalore right now?
Bangalore, as always, weather is nice, it's pleasant. I'm wearing a hoodie. So yeah, it's pretty good, except the
Okay.
traffic.
Yeah. Right. So you've been in Bangalore for like from since your childhood, or you've shifted for your
Yeah, so
company?
I've been in Bangalore for about 16 years. So I came here when I was just starting my fifth standard, if I'm not wrong. So
Okay.
I've done my schooling and my college here itself.
Okay, that's great. So Rohit, before we dive into the conversation, I just want the audience to know more about you.
Right.
So please tell us, how do you see yourself?
If I have to formally introduce myself, hi, I'm Rohit. I'm the founder of a media company called Barely Opinionated. We create content across different social media platforms, educating people about what's happening in the country and around the world. I am primarily a marketing student. I did my majors in marketing, and I started my company during the lockdown because I wanted to start something on my own. And social media was booming and content creation was booming, which is why I chose this path. And I took the road of a media company instead of an individual creator, because an individual creator can fade away in about 3 4 years, but a media company lasts forever. So that's me. That's my professional life.
Okay, so to start with, I want to know more about your company. What exactly is Barely Opinionated?
So Barely Opinionated is a new age digital media company. If you know your story is niched into entrepreneurship. They cover entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm.
We are
Mm-hmm.
niched into political and social affairs, and we do that through social media and our website. So our goal is to basically give out factual information through social media, because social media consumption is very high, but it has a lot more it has a lot more things that are not going to add value to your life,
Right.
uh, and we want to sort of fill that gap.
Okay, so when you were starting this company, Barely Opinionated, was there a particular incident that drove you towards this particular path, or was it just instinctive?
Yeah, what drove me towards this is that there was so much during lockdowns where you were probably in your house scrolling through social media. You had free time, probably, right?
Hmm.
Most of us had a lot of free time. Most of us were scrolling through social media, and the only thing that was on social media was that at that point was COVID, how government is handling it, how how things are going and stuff like that, and everyone had their own opinions of what was happening, what can be done better, because everyone had free time. They had a lot of free time to think about it, right? So what started happening was that, say I came across something, I use social media to put out my opinion on that. You would read
Hmm.
my opinion and form your own opinion based on my opinion. But
Right.
you didn't even know if the opinion that I was putting out was factual or not, right?
Right.
Was it based on any facts, or was I just blabbering something based on what I had read from someone else, right? So essentially what was happening was information and opinions was becoming Chinese whisper. And because of that,
Hmm.
there was a lot of misinformation. There was a lot of incidents of wrong facts going around. The idea of WhatsApp University came out of that. So
Hmm.
that is what triggered me towards building Barely Opinionated, because people who are using Instagram, people who are putting out their opinions on Instagram, you may as well read facts first and then put out your opinion. That was the idea.
Okay, so is there a problem statement that you can define for your company?
The problem statement is how can we give reliable information through a mass platform.
Okay, fair enough. And so, while starting an organization, one of the biggest concerns is that how the structure of the organization will look like, how the governance will look like. So, how did you go about making it, and how does it look like right now?
Yeah, for a company, for a startup, no one cares about the governance in the beginning, right? No one cares
Okay.
about the structure of the organization. That's like the last thing that people like. Even like startups that are funded and say have a team of 40 people, 50 people, the organized hierarchical structure is not that great. They probably don't even have an HR,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
So that is one of the last things that people care about. The first thing that entrepreneurs really care about is how am I going to make money, and is this business viable? Right? That's the
Okay.
first thing that people that entrepreneurs really think about.
Right. So, can you give us a look into that, how the organization looks like right now? So, like, how do you go about recruiting? How do you see people? How do you place people in the organization? Can you give us a gist about it?
Again, we have like our team is very small. We have a team of about 10 to 12 people that are full time, and we have an extended team of about 20 people, which includes freelancers and part time people, right? So
Okay.
right now it's a very flat system that we follow. I sort of manage everyone myself. I obviously have certain POCs that I talk to. Like for example, I have one POC for research, I have one POC for design, I have one POC for video, and then they sort of manage all the work. But then I end of it also, I make sure I manage everyone individually, because at such a small organization you can't have a it doesn't make sense to have a hierarchy almost.
Hmm. Okay, makes sense. So, in future, as you grow, do you plan to expand the team, or do you think that smaller teams are better?
Smaller teams are always better, especially for us, because we are a bootstrap media company, right? First of all, to hire people you need money, right? And my main agenda is ki how do we maintain profitability regardless of what the business environment looks like, right?
Hmm.
Which means that we need to keep a lean team, but then that lean team that we keep has to be a very focused team, and not like people that are coming in just for the sake of working, right? People that are coming in just for the sake of earning money. That is not what we do. We get people that are dedicated, that understand our vision, and that are ready to work hard, and we compensate them accordingly.
Okay. That's it's really insightful, because a company, when we look at a company from outside, as an MBA student at least, we see n number of people working in it, and
That's
uh,
because you're probably looking at like the bigger organizations, right? Like
yeah.
if you look at any, like again, like we are a creator first organization. If you look at any creator led organization, especially if
Hmm.
it's just into content creation, they have a very lean and small team. Even if they're making like crores monthly, they don't need a big team to execute what they want to execute, as long as the dedication is there,
Okay.
right? So it's simply about like as an MBA student, you're probably looking at the bigger organizations, the bigger startups like the Flipkarts and the Mishos, and like the your story is again a funded media company, right? They're
Hmm.
funded, which is why they're able to sustain themselves, which is why they are able to have such a huge organization. But
All
that's not
right.
the case in you talk to any bootstrap founder or a bootstrap startup. Either they keep their teams really lean, or they have a very flexible way of working where they work with a lot more freelancers, and they work with consultants rather than having full-time employees, because taking the burden of having employees and then not having a recurring source of income is a nightmare for any founder.
Makes sense actually.
Hmm.
So, in Barely Opinionated, how do you guys go about functioning? So, what my exact question is that what's the process that you follow? How do you remove those biases from the news that you see? How do you plan to create content? How do you present it? Tell us about the process.
So process, like for example, if we have to say put out a video,
Yeah.
right? The initial part is of obviously what sort of topic do we need to cover. The topic comes from what it's either what is trending, either or what people are talking about, or what is really important, what is the important development that's happening in the country or around the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that is the first step to for us to sort of ideate the topic. Ideation itself takes at least 3 to 4 people sitting for an hour coming up with different topics, and then finally sort of we take the call key, okay, this topic makes the most sense, right?
Right.
Once the topic is chosen, then we look at how, what is the delivery mechanism of that information. Can that information be delivered in an infographic manner? Can that information be delivered in a video manner? Or can that information be delivered in a written, right? Now, say for example, we choose the, okay, we want to deliver this information in a video format. Once we finalize that, then comes in what is the sort of format of video that we are using, right?
Hmm.
There are so many trends, there are so many ways to present information, there are so many things that can be done, right? Are we going on the field and talking to people? Are we sitting in our studio and sort of scripting content? Are we just making a, design video where you don't need a face, you just need, say, a voiceover and just text, right?
Yeah.
So there are various ways in which that information can be delivered in a video also, and we then finalize what sort of video we want to create. And then comes the script. Like, when all of this is being decided, the research is happening, right? Research is happening in the background, and once research is finalized and the type of video that we want to make is finalized, then the scripting process comes,
Okay.
right? And scripting is again based on what is the output going to look like, right? Because scripting cannot be disconnected from the video editing part. Scripting and editing go hand in hand. So once that is done, then is when we sort of shoot, and then editing takes place and the video is put on. So a journey of a video can range anywhere between, say, one video can take anywhere between like a 7 hours to like a 12-15 hours, depending on what sort of topic are we covering, what sort of resources do we need. So yeah.
Okay. I've noted everything down. It'll be helpful for me as well. Rohit, if you don't mind sharing, what is the revenue model of Barely Opinionated?
So Barely Opinionated primarily earns from two different models. One is we do brand collabs on our page. Second
Hmm.
is we do agency work for other companies. We help other companies create content on their social media. That is the bigger chunk of our revenue.
Okay. And if we look at how do you plan to change it in the future? Do you plan to expand and get into more sources of income?
Yes, we ideally as a distribution company, we don't want to just be a distribution company. We want to have a product plug into it, and that
Hmm.
is like once we have the distribution sorted out, that is when we sort of plug the product, right? Where our distribution
Hmm.
is not large enough for us to be able to sell a product at this point.
Okay.
So we want our revenue streams to not rely a lot on brands and agency work, but I wanted to rely more on the content we create and the product we sell.
Hmm. That's true actually. And also, as you are a bootstrapped startup, do you plan to stay bootstrapped or do you plan to raise funding in future?
We don't plan to raise funding per se, because again, like I've spoken to n number of funded startup founders, and the biggest nightmare for them is not the business, but it's their investors, right?
Yeah.
If everyone I speak to, if they simply say, if I could, I would just go back to building a bootstrapped dhanda, not a funded startup, right? Because it's a completely different mindset. It's the rat race in that is never ending, and that is not a rat race that I want to get into. What we are looking at is getting strategic partners and investors that not necessarily are investing money, because we don't necessarily need money, right? Our expenses are not too,
Hmm.
and our profit margins are good, right? So we don't necessarily need money, but what we need are strategic partners that can help us better the business and guide us better in terms of the building of the business.
Okay. And when you create this particular startup and barely opinionated, how do you make a competitive advantage? Or is there any, or do you just plan to leverage on the fact that you're a niche political and social affairs related media house?
See, we are a niched out company. Like, I wouldn't say a lot of people have. Honestly, most people don't have the guts to create content that we create, right? Because it's political in nature. People are just scared. That's simply the answer, right? That is one.
Mm-hmm.
but more importantly, a media company or a distribution led company is mainly differentiated by the person on the face of it, right?
Okay.
So if whether you look at any of the traditional media companies, right? But if you look at like a Republic, right, which is I would say
Hmm.
a newer media company compared to like a Times Now and all of that. And
Hmm.
Republic is solely functional because of Arnab Goswami, because he's the face of it, right?
Hmm.
Similarly, you look at other media companies. I'm not talking about the traditional ones like the Hindus and Times of, because those have been existed forever. I'm talking about the newer
Hmm.
ones. If you look at your story was also in the digital space. It's like one of the dinosaurs, right? Because they started long ago and their niche was very simple, which is entrepreneur, right? But if you look at it now,
Hmm.
before Shraddha Sharma was never, who's the founder of your story, was never really showing her face or coming on camera or creating content. But
Right.
even her, even though she is good enough to not have to do it, she is coming in front of the camera and she is creating content herself. Another example is Humans of Bombay. Humans of Bombay is also social media company, right? They
Hmm.
create, their simple thing is they will tell stories of other people. But
Hmm.
now the founder, which is Karishma Kapoor, if I'm not wrong, she is now coming on camera and creating her podcast and creating video content herself, right? So at this point, for a distribution led company or a media company, the differentiating factor is solely the face. Um, and that is what people trust.
So do you also end up creating a personal brand out of barely opinionated?
No, like obviously you do, but it just depends on the sort of level of distribution that you're playing in, right? And it's the way you
Okay.
are able to connect with the audience. So until like a few months ago, the way I was creating content, I was putting content first and me second, right? So
Hmm.
people were not necessarily connecting with me, but people were watching Barely Opinionated because of the topic. So if a topic did well, people would watch. If a topic didn't do well, people wouldn't watch, right?
Hmm.
But over the last few months, we've changed the strategy for me to become first and the content to become content to go hand in hand with me, right?
Okay.
So essentially, people are not just coming on the page to watch the topic, but they're coming because I am the one talking about it.
Okay. And if you look at the entire market of content creation or the specific category where you are creating content in, how do you plan to position your content? How do you want the audience to perceive your content as?
See, our vision is basically that we should be the sole go-to platform or go-to channel for people to get reliable information on social. That's our main.
Hmm.
That's it.
Hmm. Okay, that is interesting. And so this was about your company, right? Now let's talk about a broader perspective where we talk about journalism as a whole. So do you see journalism as a social responsibility?
No, that's not a social responsibility because you're not getting anything out of it, right? A person is always selfish to what they want, right? And to tag journalism as a social responsibility is putting a journalist in a position that they shouldn't be put into or pressured into.
Okay. So, hmm. So let's just keep the journalist out of the entire picture and let's just focus on the journalism as a profession. So journalism as a profession, do you not see as a social responsibility?
What do you mean by social responsibility? How do you define social responsibility?
So you're basically responsible to the society. Whatever you're creating, society is consuming, and it is creating an impact. It's creating a larger impact. So
Correct.
do you see it
You
as
are
a social?
responsible to the society based on
Yeah.
the perspective that you have.
Huh.
Got it?
Right. Right.
Correct. So if I'm a
Huh.
journalist, and if you're
Hmm.
saying that I'm responsible to the society, I am
Hmm.
responsible to the society based on the perspective that I have, and that is the journalism that I will do,
Right.
right? But my perspective and your perspective might not be the same, and my way of journalism and what your ideology of journalism is might not be the same.
Hmm.
You get what I mean?
Right.
So what I'm trying to say is, you can tag journalism as social responsibility, but everyone has a different definition of social responsibility, which is
Hmm.
why you cannot really put a definition to it.
Okay. And so, considering this, in Germany, there were three media houses who came together to form a cartel. They call it Bonn University, Bonn University. And they basically work towards promoting journalism as a social responsibility. Do you think such collaborations are possible in India as well?
It definitely is, but not on the larger scale.
Hmm.
Um, I'm what I mean is it is definitely possible, but not for the traditional media companies to do, because
Hmm.
traditional media companies are at this point sold, right? And for that, you also have to look at their business model, right? When you look at a business model of a traditional media company, the business model is, okay, we will come on TV, we will get ads, right? We'll get
Hmm.
ads. But the issue is that the ad money that was flowing into TV is now going to social media. So
Hmm.
they don't have any other place to get money except from the government or from political parties, which is why the bias of these organizations come in. So if you look at any big anchor coming on TV right now, they are biased, right? It's very clear that they are biased towards the government, they're biased towards the party, right? So them coming together and forming, and these collective exists. It's not like it doesn't exist in India. There are
Hmm.
a group like one group has formed their own collective, other group has formed their own collective,
Hmm.
and they are again fulfilling social responsibility based on their perspective, not based on
Hmm.
someone else's perspective, right? So their perspective might be, say, supporting the government, right?
Hmm.
But a true meaning of journalism is not to support anyone. A true meaning of journalism is to question everything.
Okay. Right.
You get what I
So,
mean? Now, this Bonn
hmm.
University, I don't know how reliable or how what the agenda is,
Hmm.
but again, their perspective. It depends on their perspective of what the social responsibility is.
Hmm. Okay. Okay. So, when you talk about
Seem a little
social,
confused. If you have questions, please ask.
yeah. So, it is a little confusing, and it's a little vague topic, or a very thin line where we can differentiate things about, right?
It's very
So,
subjective. So
right, exactly, that's the word.
it's very subjective. So you can't really, again, like I said, you can't really put a definition to someone's social responsibility. I
Hmm.
might feel a social responsibility towards dogs, right?
Hmm.
But you might not care about dogs. Your social responsibility might be towards orphan children, right?
Hmm.
But I feel like orphan children are getting enough attention. I want to focus towards dogs. So again, the meaning of social responsibility for everyone is good.
Okay. And as you are a social media company, and we talk about social responsibility, so we know that social media is run via numbers, right? It's all about numbers. So this is something which I'm assuming. Correct me if I'm wrong. A reel which is based out of a trending news, right? Let's say budget. A reel or a carousel based out of trending news might attract more number of views, more number of likes, more number of comments, rather than like if we talk about something which is not really into the market, into the world. And as we talk about the social responsibility part of the journalism, that giving out information, questioning everything, as you rightly pointed out, how do you create as a company trade-off between both of them, that we are putting out the information which needs to go out, and we are also focusing on our company as a whole, and creating content according to the trending information as well.
So see, when you talk about the budget, for example, it's trending. It is
Yeah.
also very important and relevant, right?
Right.
Which is why we need to talk about
Right.
it, right? Let's take tomorrow, there'll be a
Hmm.
politician who will come and who will make an absurd statement. Like,
Hmm.
there was a politician a few years ago who said rape happens because women eat noodles,
Hmm.
right? So that's an absurd statement, and news media was just running with it, right?
Hmm.
They were just talking about it, they had debates on it and all. That is not a topic that needs to be covered, or that people need to know about, or that needs to bring attention. So we just don't focus on that, right? It's
Hmm.
that simple. It's if it's trending, do people really need to know about it? If they don't, move on and cover something else, right?
Hmm.
Like, for example, Let's like there's the Manipur issue, which is still going on even after so many months. There's the Israel-Palestine issue, which has been going on even after so many months. Russia-Ukraine has been going on for so many months. Um, and so many things are just happening, right? But the news media, like if you look at the traditional news media, none of them cover any of this.
Hmm.
They don't care. All they care about is what is the government doing properly, what is happening well. And see, whenever we talk against traditional media companies, people just assume that we are against the government, right? But that's not the case. Both are not
Hmm.
mutually inclusive. Both are exclusive of each other. I hate traditional news media companies, but that doesn't mean that I don't support them,
Hmm.
right? So there is always a trade-off between you either get views or you talk about important topics, but there is a way, and which is what we've perfected over the last, not perfected, but we continue to learn and we'll continue to sort of make it better and better and better over the last 3 years, is how can we make an uncool and an uninteresting topic more relevant for people to consume.
Hmm. Correct. So, my question follows this particular line where me as an MBA student or in general public where they consume news and they consume media, we usually refer this verb with the term news that we read news, right?
Hmm.
And rather, what I feel is that reading news is a good thing, but understanding it is more important. How exactly is it implying, or how is it really affecting what is our situation per se, right?
Correct.
So, how can one develop this particular aspect? Can you talk about it?
How do you understand news?
Yeah, right. So, how do you increase your media literacy, as to say? Because we have been talking about financial literacy for a long time now, and now as things are like getting converted into social media platforms and content creation is being booming like anything. This term which is in the market which says media literacy. So, how do you increase your media literacy?
That's a great question. So when you talk about media literacy, right?
Hmm.
Traditionally, when you read newspapers or when you read any information, when you look at, say, English newspapers,
Hmm.
right, they are not really creating content. They're creating content for like an elite group of people because of the way they sort of structure their English and they put together a piece of information, right? Media literacy can only be increased when people are able to understand and consume the information that is being told, right? So
Hmm.
it's not your responsibility to make sure that you're understanding news, but I would say it's the organization's responsibility to make sure that the information that is being delivered is consumable by the audience,
Hmm. Okay.
right? Which is what we try to do at Max. We try to simplify and break down complex topics so much that a school student should be able to understand. Right? I could be using Shakespearean language and I could be using complicated words in explaining a topic. But
Hmm.
I know that people are not going to be able to understand it, and what's going to happen is they're going to hear it or they're going to read it, and nothing is going to come out of it. Which is why the breakdown is really important. So, which is why when you see content, the
Hmm.
simplest content do the best. The simplest
Okay.
content perform the best.
Hmm. Actually, yeah, that is true. And that is how I started following Barely Opinionated. I was preparing for my CAT interviews and I saw that this page, I saw a reel of yours where
Hmm.
this page is delivering information which is very simple to consume and which is
Correct.
very simple to explain as well to an interviewer.
Correct.
So I think that is what drove me towards the page. And I think that is true, that
That
simple
is what I
content
believe
attracts.
drives people to follow bad opinion.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. We say media and journalists usually talk about problems and things which are happening in the country, world, right? Environment, as to say. And they don't really talk about solutions. So should they?
You're asking should journalism or should media companies or should journalists be talking about solutions rather than problems?
Not rather than problems, with the problems.
Yes, they should, but it's not possible for everything, right? Like, yeah, obviously we should be figuring out solutions, but a media company cannot figure out the solution, right? What it can do is hold other people responsible to figure out solutions, right? And that is the job of the media. The media's role in a democracy is to question people and make them responsible for what they are talking about, right? So, for example, if there's climate change, right,
Yeah,
media's responsibility is not to figure out how to solve climate change. There are other people that are supposed to be doing that.
correct.
Media's responsibility is to make sure that those people responsible are doing their job of figuring out the solution. So media should be questioning them and putting pressure on them. Ki, boss, where is the solution for this?
Okay, but do you think it would be a great idea where a media company comes up with the problems and also prospective solutions which can be
They do
executed,
that. They do that, but then that's not their expertise, right? So it would be like it would be shooting bullets in the dark,
right?
right? Rather, there are people responsible for it. Media has done its job of asking questions. Now it's the administration's duty to figure out what to do. If
Okay.
administration needs help, media should always be available, and media does, right? Media, if you look at print media, if you look at social media, people do. They figure they help and come up with solutions on their own. But then when they don't have enough data, when they don't have enough resources, when they don't have enough knowledge, how are they going to come up with it?
And on this line only, if we talk about how journalism as an industry can be improved, 3 years of your work in this particular industry, how do you think this can be improved?
Hmm. See, there are again different aspects to it, right? Like it's you can talk about it from a traditional media perspective, and you can talk about it from a social media perspective. So again, these are two different mediums of delivering information. When you look at traditional media, obviously it's print media, it's TV media, because the business model that traditional media follows only pushes them to get funds and which makes them biased, right? That biasness needs to go. On the other hand, when it comes to like social media also has limited ways of sort of figuring it out and making their own business model. There is a lot more, like subscriptions are there, selling your own product, selling your own merch. You can use all of that to fund your initiatives, right? But again, at the end of it, it's also the people that sort of or it's not the audience's duty, right? Again, like as a media company owner, I would say, oh, it's the people's social responsibility to fund good journalism, right? But
Mhm.
you as a consumer of media, are you going to fund good journalism? No, right? Like unless you have something in it for you,
Mhm.
right? And that is the problem. It's essentially the business model that media companies follow need to change, and more collaboration needs to happen over there.
Okay. And also, this one question comes to my mind that if I am a consumer consuming any sort of news or any sort of article, may it be biased. Let's say, may it be biased. How do I remove the bias from that particular article, and how do I, so it's around that question only, that how do I understand it better? But it's specific to bias, that how do I remove that bias?
First is you have to be like it's awareness. You have to be aware that anything you read or anything you see has some sort of bias, right?
Hmm.
Everything has bias. It just
Okay.
depends on what scale of bias is it. Is it like very low bias, or is it very high bias, or is it obviously in the middle,
Hmm.
right? So that first of all, you have to be aware that everything has biases. Now, what when you're reading an article, you need to identify yourself at what level of bias do you think it is? It is very low. Is it very low bias? Is it very high bias? Right? And at the end of it, you need to identify which is the place where you think you can get the least biased information, right? Which is what we are positioning barely opinionated to.
Okay.
So I will tell you as a if you're a media consumer, I will tell you that you should follow barely opinionated because you don't have to worry about getting biased content because we have the least biased content that comes up. And that
Hmm.
can't be determined based on one article. That can be determined based on a number of pieces that you see. And you will notice a trend. If you notice a trend that, okay, every piece is sort of going towards one side, then you know it's completely biased. If one piece is going towards another side, it's completely biased. But if after reading, say, 20 pieces of content or watching 20 pieces of content in on a channel, you notice that, oh, this, I'm not able to identify which side of the spectrum does this media company lean towards, or what sort of information is he trying to give. That is where you know that, okay, the bias is not there.
Okay, so in the process of creating content in View, do you also consume like a number of articles and a number of
Yes.
news channels?
Whenever we do research, whenever we pick out a topic, the research happens through us going through multiple pieces of multiple articles and multiple like videos and everything, right? And we watch from the left to the right, we watch all of them. Just so that we can identify key what is the right perspective, what is the left perspective, what is the center perspective, what are the facts being focused on the right, what are the facts being focused on the left, and then combine all of that to put out.
Okay, coming towards the end of the episode, I would just want to wrap this up with this one question: that as journalism as an industry, where you have been working for like more than 3 years now, where do you see the role of management coming in? So, if I structure this question in this way, that if you have to hire a MBA tomorrow, where would you place him or her in the organization?
If I had to hire a MBA tomorrow, I would place him on the business side of it and the strategy side of it. I don't necessarily know, like, obviously, it depends from individual to individual. But when I look at MBA as a whole, I look at it more like, okay, these guys will be good in business, right? So I
Hmm.
wouldn't put you guys on, say, the creative side of it, I would put you on the business side.
Okay, and the traditional media companies, as we talk about, where is management, placed over there in those
Management is a
organizations?
big factor for bootstrap companies and media companies because we are working with so many moving parts, right? Like, for example, if you look at a bigger media company, they are working with like hundreds of journalists across India, right?
Mhm.
Managing such a manpower itself is a nightmare, right? And there is so much. I'm not talking about my company or social media company, but I'm talking about traditional media companies. There
Right.
is so much movement of people coming in, people leaving, people. So it's always constantly. So how can you streamline that process, and how can you make sure that anyone coming in new gets trained quickly, right? And understands the processes and understands the values easy, right? That is what I look at the MBA's role to.
Okay, so do you consider journalism as a very volatile and very dynamic industry? Does
Yeah,
it keep on changing?
keeps on changing, and you have to keep adopting to it.
So can you share some like recent changes in the industry? How has it evolved? How has it changed?
The biggest change is the consumption of news moving from TV to news media. I mean, social media, right? Like,
Uh,
if you look at any of the bigger news channels, the views for them come on social media rather than TV. They get more news and more information on social media than on TV. And if you look at a lot of the bigger journalists, they are moving out of media companies, to so to say, and they are building their own distribution, in their own
right.
name. Ravish Kumar is a good example, right? He left
Hmm.
NDTV after Adani acquired NDTV, and now he's built a huge distribution for himself, which he owns and which he is most likely making a lot more money from. Right? You have Faye D'Souza, who is one of the bigger online news personalities, right? Who's built a distribution for herself. So I would say this is the biggest trend shift: people moving from TV to social, and anchors making their own distribution rather than being part of other media companies.
Okay. And I'm sorry, a last question. Fact that comes to my mind lately, there was some international media house who sued ChatGPT for,
Google
so
suit
chat,
chat.
sorry?
I think Google suit chat GPT.
No, there was some media house, like some Washington Post. I don't remember the name, but there was some media house who sued ChatGPT, saying that it's using their content to learn, and that is perfectly fine. but it is using
You're
their
not getting the
content.
credit for.
No, no, not the credit. It's about the chat GPT, the bot using their content to write in the tone which they write, their writers to write.
Mm-hmm.
So that is something which was a point of concern for them. So how do you see this integration of AI and journalism? Do you have any vague idea about it or something
Yeah, yeah.
specific?
I mean, that is another big friendship that is on the verge of happening. It's not happened yet, but the manpower requirement for any media organization is going to reduce heavily, right? Because a media company's job is to create content. Writing has
Mhm.
become way easier. You can just feed it to the AI tools and they will sort of understand and write it themselves.
Right.
The job of scripting becomes easier. So a lot like for media companies it's an advantage. The media company that probably suit chat gpt is not able to figure out how to use ai themselves, which is why they are sort of going against chat gpt. But then for them it's a big shift, because they are essentially cutting down their manpower cost by a lot just by switching to using ai tools.
Okay. And okay, coming towards the end, we'll end the podcast with this one particular advice from you or some recommendations from you. Can you recommend us some sources of media to consume good pieces of content where
Just
we talk
follow
about
badly
news?
opinionated. I don't
That's what
know
I would
that.
only recommend. But what else? Any other sources that you personally refer to?
No, just follow barely opinionated, because no one else will give you the no one else will give you the different perspectives and facts that we do, right? Again, it depends on how deep do you want to go into news, because we don't cover any and every topic. If you want to know about bollywood, if you want to know about entertainment, if you want to know about anything and everything, then there are other apps, and just go to InShots or Daily Brief is a good place to sort of get any and every information. But if you want to reduce the strain of you sort of filtering that information, and if you want to reduce and just consume the content that makes sense for you, and that really means something to you, then barely opinionated is the place for
Okay, perfect. And with this, we have come to the end of the episode. Thank you so much, Rohit, for joining us today. And it
you.
was a pleasure talking to you.
Definitely, thank you so much, Dhruv, for having me.
Thank you so much, Rohit.